can you imagine speaking to a room of 1,000 people once a month? And I was like, whoa. One problem that creators run into a lot is this idea of messaging, and the way that they talk about their content and their business is not usually the way that their audience talks about it.
When it comes to YouTube, I've been a student of this game since 2006. What I realize, if you want to grow anything, you can't lose sight of community.
But what about things that don't scale? If you've ever felt like you're doing everything that the YouTube gurus say, but still aren't seeing real results, you are not alone. In this episode, we're going to cut through the noise with someone who's helped creators grow from scratch to hundreds of thousands of subscribers and now teaches sustainable strategy-first growth. Welcome to Better Days. I'm your host, Daniel Kosmala. Today, I'm talking with Andrew Can, a YouTube strategist, educator, and community builder. He helped grow the TubeBuddy YouTube channel from I think it was about 6,000 subscribers to well over 500,000 subscribers. Now leads the Can Do creators community, helping thousands of creators grow with strategy, not stress. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Already my day's better. So you nailed the promise of the podcast.
I love it. I love that. Is there anything else that people should know about you before we dig in?
I would say when it comes to YouTube, I've been a student of this game since 2006. YouTube has been around since 2005. So one thing that people ask a lot is, how do you know so much? I've just been watching it pretty much since the beginning. So this is not new to me.
Well, who were you before YouTube was your career? Like, what was your life actually like at the beginning of this kind of YouTube journey for you?
So I have to preface this because this is a realization I've had. I've been on YouTube most of my life because of how young I was when I have found the platform. So it's actually kind of hard for me to remember a time before YouTube. So back then I was again in middle school, so I was just a student. But if I look at it as a professional career, it was someone who loved storytelling and who went for film school because I wanted to see, I loved storytelling. I saw YouTube as a way to do it. I saw it as a free way to do it because you have to remember that YouTube is being around for 20 years. Back in the day, it wasn't so easy to make content and do what we get to do now. So I say all that to say I watched the industry change before my eyes, and I was part of that early change where when I went to film school, they're like, you can do tried and true traditional media. We're talking films, we're talking television shows, or experimental digital is what they called it, which was Netflix and YouTube, which in hindsight, crazy, but who knew, right?
Right. That's well, let's say when you came out of film school, like where were you at that point in time, and what were you hoping for when you kind of shifted out of that and into the workforce?
I will have to preface, I'm one of those people that is a combination of luck, but just overly prepared. So outside of film school, I got an internship with a YouTube NCN. So I didn't leave jobless. I did everything you were supposed to do because I'm like, if there's a rubric, I'm going to do my best to follow it because at least I know I'm doing all I can. And so outside of film school, I had an internship with a YouTube NCN that then went to offer me a job, which I worked there for about 2 years. And then after that, I landed at TubeBuddy, which is where most people know me from. So I literally went from film school to an internship to a job while in school, which was definitely, a lot of my classmates are like, you don't need to work and be in school, pick one. And I'm like, well, as great as that sounds, I'm going to do both. And, years later, I like to say it worked out.
I would say so. So going from a channel with, it had sort of an established kind of foundation in that, there were a few thousand subscribers on the channel to the kind of astronomical growth that you saw while you were there on the YouTube, the TubeBuddy channel. Like, how did you decide where to take that channel to build it? Like, how did you know or figure out where to find the audience and what they wanted to see?
Sure. I think when I came onto the channel, we'll start there in your question. A lot of people, thankfully, to this day are like, when I think of TubeBuddy, I think of you. And that's like one of the biggest compliments because at the first little bit, that wasn't the case at all. They're like, who is this new guy? Who are you? And so that immediately told me, I have to earn my keep here. because they were established watching some other people that were doing the content before me. And the CEO of TubeBuddy, Phil, found me in mutual communities. I've always, as much as I have been a YouTuber, I have been a very community focused person because at the end of the day, what I realized, if you want to grow anything, you can't lose sight of community. So that actually informed my strategy. You
Mhm.
know, they originally brought me on to do a one-off video to see if it'd work. And then the response was good and they liked the video. So they kept bringing me back and bringing me back. And then TubeBuddy as a company is like, hey, we love the video work you're doing. You know, we saw some of the community work you're doing. Would you like doing both? So what a lot of people don't know is the first job I had was doing the videos, but just as important was doing the community for TubeBuddy. So what informed my strategy was actually listening to the community problems. What were they asking, and how could I title the videos not to be your traditional how to grow on YouTube, but it's like, how do I actually upload a thumbnail? How do I do the very basics? And now it's so commonplace, but you have to remember, it wasn't that common then because people are like, well, YouTube already made a video. Why should I? But if you're watching this and you're like, why, if the video already exists, why should I? Because what I've learned doing this for years is how Daniel teaches something might be what you need to finally get a concept. How I teach something might be what you need. And humans on average, according to data and research, take 7 times to hear a thing before it clicks. So if Daniel and I say it, that's 2, and who knows how many people you've heard it from before us. So all of a sudden, we might be your 7th time and that concept sticks. So when it came to the strategy, it was listening to what the people genuinely needed and then finding ways to surprise them and not in ways that they don't know what they need. So it's really kind of that balance. It all comes back to community and never losing sight of it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest, because I had kind of inherited a slightly similar thing at Uscreen. Like when I joined, there were like 3,000, I think, subscribers on their main channel, and I did not grow up to hundreds of thousands, but got it to like, it's currently, I think, close to 30,000 subscribers or whatever. But one of the things I learned early on is I just had this unrealistic expectation of how growth was going to go on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I was just like, here's what I'm going to do. And this strategy is going to do this and it's going to be awesome. And then that didn't happen. And I would get so down on myself and be like, why didn't that video hit? But then I'd get a comment from a single person that was like, hey, this was so good. This was exactly what I needed. It hit me at the right time in the right place. And I was like, well, it didn't get the views I wanted, but at least I have like, I was like, give myself a little bit of a pat on the back for that kind of thing. But then I forget who it was that told me this, but they were like, hey, you're getting on average, these views get like 1,000 views over the course of a month or 2 months or whatever it was. Can you imagine speaking to a room of 1,000 people once a month? And I was like, whoa, because that's like filling a ballroom at a conference. It's not just like a small breakout room. That's like filling a reasonably sized room.
Your
And then
keynote speaker.
right, and then you go look at how many views you've stacked up over the course of 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and you're like, oh, this is 500,000 people. Well, then that's the equivalent of filling up like an NFL stadium for five,
5 of
six
them.
games a year, which is basically like I basically could start in the NFL now. Is what we're
Good for you.
that train that
What's
transfer.
what's the position we're going for?
I think I'll probably go with like ball boy is
Fair
probably
enough.
probably
I'll be
what.
right there beside you as water boy. Together, they'll never be able to stop us.
Love it. Perfect. But it was just that simple transition of like, hey, you're being hard on yourself, but actually the thing that's happening here is you're helping people. And that's what really
Absolutely.
matters. And so I think it might have even been one of your videos where you said something like that. I've probably heard it multiple times at this point, but it really made such a big difference for me in how I approached YouTube. Did you have any moment like that when you were growing the TubeBuddy channel where you were like, I expected this to hit and it didn't, but this happened as a result and it was even better than I thought?
I think for me, the goal of the TubeBuddy channel was to help people first and foremost, and it came from the leadership was it doesn't matter the views, it matters the retention, which was very forward thinking because basically it was focus on how long people are watching, not how many views you're getting, which is ironically what YouTube later would change their philosophy to anyway. So I guess the good thing about our CEO at the time, Phil, was that he was kind of always ahead of that game. And like that's what made that company successful. So I was focused on the retention because for me, I knew early on, you know, you talk about did views not go the way I wanted to? Absolutely, right? Like you spend hours of your life, some of the most precious resource we have is time. So you're putting hours on a video, and then, this is going to hit, and then like 30 people really liked it, and that's all you got. And you have to learn to be like, okay, 30 people, that's a classroom. If that was in front of me, I would be very, very gracious for that amount of people that showed up. And I think that, you know, it was learning early on that it was not so much views come, right? Views will come if you build out your packaging. So your title, your thumbnail, your description, what you say in the video, views will come. However, but you got to weather that early on to understand that when people say, like you even said, and I've had to have this conversation myself, the views we want versus the views that we earn are not necessarily one to one. And it is earned. You have to earn those views, right? Because if you're watching this far in, you probably know Daniel very well, and you may not know me at all, and that's fine. So we're still earning that trust. We're earning that valuable time. So what I learned early on is that if the views are low, what can I do to look deeper? Is it maybe I didn't make a great thumbnail, which that tends to be a lot. Maybe my title wasn't as great as I thought it was in getting people to click. So when I look at that, I go, what could I do better? And I focus on the things I can actually change, which I think we've both, through our lives, have had to learn there are things we can change and things we can't.
Yeah, especially when you're working as a creator inside of a company. There are often so many variables outside of your control, and you just have to work with the materials that you have. But for individual creators, I'm curious. This is kind of a two-part question for you. As somebody who loves both the content side and maybe even more so the community side of things, what are the I know that YouTube changes all the time. Like it's the YouTube of today is so much different than the YouTube of 2018, 2015, 2012, like such a different world. And I'm curious, like, what are the principles that you learned about building and developing content that matters? And then the second part is like, what are the principles you learned about community that really guide who you are and how you approach it today?
Sure. So let's start with the first one. What did I learn when it comes to like making content and like figuring out like how to keep that relevant? So when it comes to that side, what I tend to notice was I kind of approach content as twofold. A lot of creators make the mistake that YouTube is about them. And it used to be. It used to be called YouTube Broadcast Yourself back in the day, back when they did it. But YouTube made a change where they removed that. And they said you really need to focus on your audience interest. And that's actually been their strategy ever since. YouTube understands the audience very well. So when I think of community and I think about YouTube strategy, they actually go hand in hand. They're not separate. People often separate them. Daniel, if you have a favorite restaurant, right? I want you to think about it in your head. And you kind of know what to expect of this place. Now imagine, like, well, in this example, your favorite restaurant's a pizza restaurant. Most people understand pizza. All right, Daniel. Moving forward, every Tuesday and Thursday is tofu Thursdays and Tuesdays for your pizza. And you see his face? That's great. But guess what? You're not probably going to do on Tuesday and Thursdays.
Eat pizza.
Right. So what if immediately see how Daniel reacted, right? What people do with their YouTube channels is they will sell them on the idea of one thing, but they want to change and they want to do other things. And that's fine. But you should probably make a new restaurant or a new channel, right? Because all of a sudden, see how Daniel responded? If he's wanting pizza and he goes in and they're like, nah, it's tofu Tuesdays, and he forgot it's tofu Tuesdays, well, that's not a great experience as him as a customer, as a experience, as a community member. And look, I'm not making tofu Tuesdays and Thursdays. And if you like tofu, that's great. I like tofu too. But if I'm going to my pizza place and they only serve tofu on those days, it's a different experience. And so many YouTube channels are that way, where they will have one focus that the audience and the community really likes. And they're like, well, I want to change things up and experiment. This isn't working, but it was working. But now you've introduced something that, not that it's not wanted, but it's not what you promised them. And as a community, right? Daniel, if you and I, when we were scheduling this, you're like, come here at this day and I'll be there. And you were. And here's the thing. If you say that and you're there, but instead of doing the podcast, you're like, actually, Andrew, I need your help with taxes. I'd be like, Okay, I'll do my best, but boy, this is really different than what I thought we're doing. And as a community member, it does affect how we feel and it affects how we change. If anything, YouTube is a mirror into understanding you are in the service industry. You are serving your community, your audience constantly. And that does not mean that you can't still try and do things that you want to do. If I'm that pizza place, maybe I try tofu on top of pizza. I probably wouldn't eat it personally. I like tofu and I like pizza, maybe not together, but at least there's a bridged gap. I understand how we got here over just a full tofu, Tuesday and Thursday, right? So a lot of times when we try new things, it's so drastically different. And so when it comes to community, it comes to strategy, consistency is consistently showing up and doing things that are growing and learning the right way. Because if Daniel and I consistently do something wrong, all we've learned is how to do it the wrong way.
You said so many great things just then. I love those examples so much because it's like I don't have anything against tofu, but like pizza's in my top five. I wouldn't put tofu in my top five. So like if you promise me pizza and then give me tofu or something, I'm probably gonna be like, oh, do I have to? Um, but beyond that, you said a couple really great things. I think one problem that creators run into a lot is that is this idea of messaging and the way that they talk about their content and their business is not usually the way that their audience talks about it. In a lot of cases, like I see this all the time, and you heard me talk about this in October at the Uscreen event, where I was explaining like with memberships, people often kind of default to talking about features rather than value and benefits. But the audience doesn't care about the features yet because you haven't made them care. So you have to talk about those things that matter to them, which is the values and the benefits to them before you can talk about the features. And so when you're talking about a YouTube channel like that, I can see some instances where the way that I might talk about a channel that I'm trying to communicate to an audience that might be one way, but then the audience sees maybe the topic or whatever, and then perceives it in an entirely different way. How do you go about bridging that communication gap through a medium like this?
Expectation versus perception.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a lot of times, I've helped now officially how to channels, entertainment channels. I've had the privilege of doing multiple different channels at multiple different scales. And what I've learned is that audience expectation is hard to define, and that you can make like the best thumbnail, the best content ever, but like I have that weird gene where cilantro tastes like soap to me.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I hear that constantly. For me, I'm like, why are you all eating dish soap, right? But here's the thing: if Daniel puts out a video, and I love Daniel's content, it's like the 10 best cilantro recipes. It's never going to be for me,
Mm.
and there's nothing I can do to change that. So you can be the best in your segment, the best focus, the best intentionality, and there's always going to be a part of your audience that will just not get it or not care. What's more important is when you are making that content, how long did people watch? How did it respond? Did it get impressions on platform? Did people talk about it? Because a lot of times people look at videos and they just post them, but it's like, what did you want them to take away emotionally? Not only did they learn something, did they feel like they could actually do it? Which has been a success for me. I like people are like, you mentioned earlier, this really helped me. People are like, I actually think I can do this. Like that to me is the best signal I did something right. Because a lot of this is complex, right? And people say the way you start a journey is one step at a time, but the way you make a YouTube channel successful is one upload at a time. But it goes before that. It's one idea before you commit the idea to execution. And finding those ideas and perception, if you are worried that maybe it didn't match the audience expectation, I would tell you to A/B test, which is now free on the YouTube platform. And that's huge because here's something a lot of people don't know either. Daniel and I started before half of this data was available. We didn't have click-through rate. We didn't have A/B testing. So this is the best time to start YouTube because we have more data than ever. And people are like, why are new channels blowing up? It's like, well, you and I had 50-pound weighted vest and we're still having to run the marathon as if we're not wearing it. These people, thankfully, don't have the 50-pound vest and are just running. And the thing is, it's not our fault that we have the 50-pound vest, and it's not their fault they didn't have to run without it. What we can do is run this race the way we want to. And that's something I think is super important.
I love that. Now, as somebody who's worked for some big brands, right? Like you worked for TubeBuddy, you went to Salesforce, you spent time at Disney doing content at all those places specifically for YouTube, and having created for yourself and individuals and doing consulting. I'm curious, what are the kind of what are the biggest differences between those two worlds of like creating for a brand versus creating as an individual creator, and then how does that impact the content itself?
So whether I'm creating for a brand or whether I'm creating for myself, one of the things about all those brands is two of them are tech companies, so that kind of gave me an idea how to talk to that audience. But, Disney being more entertainment focused made me have to focus in a completely different way, right? So when I look at a brand, one thing I've been very good at is identifying audience. And what does that mean? Knowing who I'm talking to, who I'm serving means the most important thing. And again, I got that from my time in communities, right? I think about how a community will feel more than probably most. And when I was at Adobe Max, I go to a lot of conferences similar to you, Daniel. Mark Roper, who talks about, how to go viral on YouTube, said the most overlooked thing is 9 visceral emotions. And he talks about how most people spend all this time thinking about a video, but they don't think about how will this make them feel at the end of it? Will they feel vindicated? Will they feel shocked? Will they feel there's 9 emotions there that he mentions, but those are some of the ones that when he talked about it, it made me start thinking when I found success, whether it's for a brand or for me personally, it's the reaction the audience felt. And if it is, tech tutorials, it is, wow, I actually think I can do this. And that's an emotion. You've given them relief, like you've walked them through it. I don't know about you, Daniel, but if there's a random house repair, I'm pulling up a YouTube video and I'm like, please be a good tutorial because I was not in school to fix a garbage disposal, but let's go.
Yeah, did you know there's a reset switch on the bottom of garbage disposal?
Nope, learned that in that video.
Learn that on YouTube.
Right? But then what did you feel? Vindication. You felt you could do it. And I think that that's what I've learned. Whether I'm working for a brand, for Uscreen, right? Like you work there. It's like, oh, I can do a membership and people will show up for me. Making them feel like that's possible. It is. Or whether I'm doing entertainment, it's like, well, each audience is in a company like Disney, I have so many different things. It's like each audience has a different expectation. So what I had to learn to do early on, whether it's for a brand or for me, and actually, truthfully, this helped my personal brand, is like the beauty of working for a brand is you can only have that singular focus and you got to keep hitting that focus. But that same intentionality and consistency of reaching that audience can transport to a personal brand. And that's why, I'm thankful for the 15,000 people that have said yes and have subscribed, but I'm more thankful for the 45,000 people I have every 28 days coming back and watching the content. Because your sub count doesn't define how much is in your audience. It just defines when someone said yes one time.
As somebody who has split their time kind of primarily between the content and community side of things, and you've probably seen different weights to those over the years of maybe more content heavy at TubeBuddy to today more, I'm getting guess, more heavy on the community side of things. Do you have a specific preference to those? Like, do you prefer one over the other? And then do you think there is a right way to prioritize one over the other? Or is it just kind of a fluid thing?
I think it's very fluid because, there is there's community in everything that we do. It's just what level are you welcoming someone to your community, right? So I often look at I go to restaurants as an example. If you are religious, there's church as an example. You have some people that only show up for holidays. You have people who are there every Sunday. You have people that do the extra Bible studies. So you're really deeper, involved in that community, right? And so for me on YouTube, community is the same thing. It's how you make people actually feel if they can be a part of it. I love community because what I found is like YouTube viewers treat it a lot like a gas station shop. Like, all right, I need a soda. I might as well go in. All right, got my soda, I'm out. Maybe I'll come back to that gas station. Maybe I'm not in that area again. But you think about it like Walmart sometimes has a gas station attached. Well, I was already going to Walmart and they also have a gas station. Well, there we go. So when it comes to your content, community matters more because when you get someone in your community, Then when you upload a video, they're like, well, I love Andrew. I already know him, right? Like my community is 2,500 people in my Discord server. And then we have paid members as well. So it's really almost 2,600. But when I look at that, immediately my highest traffic source in the first 48 is Discord and then browse on YouTube. But that's to me shows that I've done the thing well to where I don't wonder what my views are going to be when I upload because I've done the work to bring people in and I built that community by helping them. Like I don't like yes the community's name can do, but that's mostly like the mindset we want people to have when they join. And a huge part of that is also my co-founder Ike do. And I mean, she's been instrumental. She was at TubeBuddy with me, and I want to make sure I say this is like none of this is a single player game. This is a team sport, YouTube. And a lot of times creators will see one large creator and it's like he did it all himself. Well, actually, he or she has a team of 40 you don't see behind the scenes working hard. And what's ending up happening is you think it's just them running the race because they're the only person on the content side, but they have a pit crew that's actively there, giving them water in between takes, giving them food when they need it, right? So when it comes to it, and to answer your question, you can't separate community and YouTube because they matter together, right? And if they aren't mattering together, then you're gonna have a bunch of people, like I mentioned in that gas station example. I needed a soda and I needed gas. Well, I was in the area. Thanks for your help, and I'm done. We joked about needing that tutorial earlier, but I'll be real. After I fix that sink, I sadly probably have not watched another piece of content from that creator since because I was the gas station viewer.
That is I love that analogy because that's exactly what I experienced when I was the primary creator for the Uscreen YouTube channels. We heavily optimized and indexed on SEO for the YouTube channel, and what I quickly discovered is that our average views per viewer was very low because people would come because they were searching for a specific question or a problem or looking for a solution. They would see our video, get the answer they wanted, and then leave. And they got what they wanted. They didn't need to come back. And if they did, it's the gas station thing all over. Like, oh, that was a gas station. I might come back to if I need, quick hit again or another soda, or they have the specific thing I like or whatever, but I may never be down that road again. And I don't need it. So I definitely experienced that. That's such a great insight. Thanks for sharing that. As somebody who's worked in-house for multiple brands, three of the bigger ones, like I mentioned, and then you've also built your personal brand kind of throughout all of that. And people know you from TubeBuddy, followed your journey through some of these other places. And then you just made the decision to go out and do your own thing. What was the hardest part of that transition of going from, being in-house at a brand to I'm going to go out and do my own thing and make a bet on myself?
I think to start is going back to my co-founder helped a lot having someone there with me who's like, all right, you want to do this, I support you, let's see what we can do. I have a partner, her name's Tiffany. Was very supportive of that move as well, which if you're going to go full time and you have family or you have people around you, please run it by them. Don't just don't just decide to not inform people. But I think it was for me, I had always said that why I work for brands is to learn something new and to take things that I could apply when the time comes so that I could feel empowered to run a business in a way from all the amazing people I've had the privilege to work with. And it is a privilege to work with some people. And sometimes you go, it's a job, but I've been very much fortunate enough to I've had more privileges than it's a job. And in fact, I've only had like in my career, and this is like fast food service jobs where it's like this is a job. So I've been very blessed in that way. But what gave me that ability to go on my own? What was the scariest thing? I mean, well, when you're working for a traditional 9 to 5, there is the beauty of a consistent paycheck, and that is something that I have savings and I have things, but I love working with brands. I love working with partners, but things happen. Maybe there's a government shutdown, which your partner is based in another country. And all of a sudden you're realizing, oh, when the government shuts down, no one's doing those foreign transaction things you hear about. Huh. Well, that's interesting. So you learn like little things you didn't know. Another thing that was challenging was like getting over the idea that what I thought the audience liked and what they do like are not always one to one. So I thought people just wanted tutorials, that's what I've built my bread and butter on. I love doing them, but people are like, "Well, yeah, but like we also want to know a little bit more about Andrew, and like we'd love to see you do some live streams, maybe some more shorts." So what I thought they wanted and what they actually keep showing up for was a little different. And it's all within the same realm of like making YouTube affordable and accessible. And there are multiple ways I could do that. But it surprised me what you kind of mentioned earlier. I thought I knew what they wanted, and they did show up for that, but they wanted more than even I expected. And so even though I know how to do YouTube, personal brands and personal channels are hard because we're almost too close to it, which is why having someone like Ike, who is my co-founder, or having people who can objectively say, "Hey, yeah, you like this and so does the audience, but you're discounting blank." And that is invaluable.
And how did you go about building? You mentioned that you have a Discord community of like 2,500, 2,600 people. How did that come about? And how long before you left the in-house brands did you start building that?
So I actually was building that in between jobs. So at a time, Ike and I started the Discord before we started the business. We actually have our roadmap on our website, but we did it all out of order. Like we started a community, and the community was like, "Hey, we want to pay you for this," and we're like, "You want to pay us for this, but it's for free." And they're like, "No, we want to pay you." I'm like, "Oh, okay. So I guess we should probably look into how we could do that." So we actually built the community first, and then by their feedback, they're like, "Hey, we want coaching from you." I'm like, "Oh, okay, but like why?" And they're like, "Why?" It was again, it was that self-doubt because at the time I was still in between corporate jobs and I didn't think that this could be. Even though I'd seen it through TubeBuddy, millions of creators doing it. I just always thought I needed more time or I still needed stuff to learn. And that's why I still went back to those corporate jobs. But it became a point in my career where everyone's like, "Oh, no one knows YouTube like you. You are the expert. We look to you." And it made me think, I'm not learning anything anymore. And so when I stopped learning, I had to think, well, ships are safest in the harbor, but that's not what ships are built to do. They're not built to stay at port. So I had built my savings up. I knew that I wanted to always some point in my life do this. So I planned for it. I didn't just, like I said, please plan. If you're going to exit, make a plan. Have boundaries to if this succeeds or fails, right? Because what I found was when I talked to creators who did it before me, they just did it and they had no guardrails, no savings. They just did it. And sometimes it worked. Unfortunately, a lot of times it didn't. So that's kind of those steps that made me feel confident in leaving that. And it wasn't easy, but we're still here.
And in building the subscription for the Can Do creator community, what's been the biggest triumph, and then what have been some of the hardest obstacles, or maybe unforeseen obstacles, things that you didn't expect before you started the subscription side of things?
Time zones are the biggest obstacle. Genuinely,
Yeah.
like, look, YouTube is made the world global. Like, globalization is a great thing, especially on the internet. But it's hard to when you have like people in Australia and you have people in the East Coast and you have people in this time zone and then Hawaii has its own time zone. And so all of a sudden, like you have members who are like, "Yeah, I can't make calls because of this, this, and this." And like that's something I didn't foresee was, I know how valuable time is, but you also forget not everyone's on the same time. So that was a struggle and that was an unforeseen consequence. One of the benefits though was at first, we learned this from a Uscreen event. So shout outs to you, shout outs to your team, was that, ironically, we had priced it close to what we thought was fair for YouTube stuff. We were originally at $4.99 and $9.99. I'm sure Daniel, your face says everything. And ironically, not a lot of people joined. And then we raised our prices and we saw like 3 times the joining. And I don't know why. It's a weird psychology that maybe Daniel, you could give me some clarity on. But when we raise prices, people are like, "Yes," and I'm like, "Okay."
It's not universal, but there does seem to be this kind of inverse correlation between like audience size and price, if that makes sense. So like some of the biggest people that I've seen have a membership with tens of thousands of paying members charge sometimes the lowest prices. So like if you think of a big entertainment YouTuber who has maybe a membership, often you'll see, like, I think Mythical is a great example. I love Good Mythical Morning. They have the Mythical Society, which is their membership, and like their first tier, I think, is like somewhere in the 4 to like 8.99 range. Like I think it's less than $10. Now, to their credit, they have a more complex system. They've been doing a membership for a long time, so they have like 4 different pricing tiers. But a lot of these huge YouTubers, they come in and they start with a much lower price because their audience is so big and so broad that the majority of the people in that audience tend to have a lower buying power or willingness to buy for some reason. And I don't know if that's a reach thing or what, but they, because of that, they'll set their price low at like 4, 5, 6.99 a month. Now, conversely, when you get to somebody who's got like 20,000 followers, and they've got like, or they have 2,500 people in a Discord, those people are typically more targeted. Um, I don't know why. If it's because they have more time or what, that they end up having more buying power or more willing to invest in themselves, or what it is. I don't know what I there's certainly some psychological component to it, but because of that, you can then price higher because those same people who, if they see a lower price thing, they just immediately think, oh well, maybe that's not super valuable, right? Because like if I'm gonna go pay 4.99 for a subscription for an entertainment thing, I'm assuming it's their ad supported tier at this point, like Peacock or Netflix. Like that's what they're charging for their ad supported low tiers. And so I think I'm going to get like a lower experience. And I am personally willing to pay more money for the more premium experience at this point in my life. So there seems to be kind of like a inverse relationship there. I'm sure there is a psychological breakdown of that deep, like somewhere online. I couldn't explain it to you though.
Sure. No, I think but what you did explain was very helpful. And like it also taught us that we saw near where at this point it was like 2 to 2.5 times growth, and all we did was charge more, but we grandfathered those in. Like I want to make sure like I make this clear, like those who supported us early, we kept them in that same price. But then by raising it, we doubled, near tripled, and I'm like, it was so interesting because that was something that surprised me. You mentioned what surprised you. I didn't think, and we again learned this from what you guys said. And when we did it, they came, and it was almost, I think, thinking about it a little more, even in your example, we do have a preconceived notion of help. And, I think a lot of people have paid for college and maybe they're used to paying more for education. That's my shot in the dark take. But it's interesting because when it comes down to it, we learned through Uscreen last year about like how to set up a good Black Friday deal. And like what I've learned is when you are selling something, I don't sell the value, I sell what the experience is. And I think that's something that gets lost in communities and gets lost in YouTube is what is the experience?
I think you hit on something there that I think is worth commenting on, which is that I think there is a certain audience that's willing to pay more for education than entertainment. I think that is a really really big part of it. Like people will pay for entertainment experiences, right? Like they'll pay thousands to go to an F1 race. They'll pay hundreds to go to a concert. They'll pay $50 for or $100 for like a UFC live stream or a Jake Paul fight where he gets his jaw cracked in half or whatever it is. And then education, you see people will pay $10 for stuff, they'll pay $50, they'll pay 300, they'll pay 3,000. Though there are some crazy people who pay 30,000, 100,000 for educational experiences on the very high end. Like I've seen that world, and it still blows my mind how much people will pay just to get in the room with people that they perceive as like they're going to get value from an education point. So I think that is, I think you hitting on that was really perfect. You mentioned you and Ike, who I've also met, and she's wonderful, have come to our Uscreen events. You've actually been to 2 in Los Angeles. So you saw our very first one, and you saw like what that was like, which was our first one. It was kind of like, let's see if this can work, if it's got legs. It did. And then you've seen our most recent one, which was kind of I would say quite the evolution from the first one that you attended. But I'm curious, you got to hear kind of what I'm referring to these days as a creator clarity session, which is like the explanation of how I diagnose businesses when I work with people and help coach them through things, and where they need to work on things in their business. And so I'd love to kind of like flip the mic on you a little bit and be like, what stood out to you the most from the most recent event, and like what resonated the most with you that you've thought about or acted on since?
For us, I can tell you, we immediately when we got home implemented, and its experiences start the second they engage with you. And a lot of people forget that. You had a great analogy that people met us at the door, that people sat us down, that people said, "How are you? What do you do?" Like, every step of the way, there was someone. And restaurants do this too, and you pointed that out. Daniel is very humble. He is an incredible, educator. He is an incredible speaker. Here he is being so humble, but I will brag on Daniel. Like, what I learned is like some of the things that you were talking about, they aren't just about community, they're about the self. And a lot of times we are our own biggest roadblock. And you talked about how sometimes we lack the ability to see what we could do. And I'm like, that is something I usually tell other people, but I rarely reflect it inward. And now that I'm thinking about reflected inward, maybe people pay more for education because it is an investment in the self, whereas entertainment can be an investment in time and in community. And they're two different things. I'm
Mm-hmm.
willing to spend a little bit more on me than maybe other things, right? And so when I learned from you and when you were just talking about is like, don't cheapen yourself either. And I've fallen guilty in that. Heck, even in my own membership pricing, right? So like you talked about, like you're valuable and you have to know it too for your audience to believe it. And that was something where it's like I'd heard it, but not said that way. And it goes back to what we said earlier. Daniel, for me, was the right person to hear in that moment for me to finally get it.
Man. Well, thanks for saying that. That means a lot to me because me, Rob, and the rest of the team work really hard to make those events better and better and better each time. Um,
I'm
but
excited for the third, I have to say.
hey, me too. I don't think my wife's excited about me leaving town now that I've got four kids. We'll cross
Fair
that
enough.
bridge. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, I think that experience thing. I think one of the big things that stands out to me, kind of like in the macro of the business world, is there's been such a push for probably the close to the last decade of like, how does this scale? How does this become one to many? How does this become, you know, one person can deal with hundreds of people or thousands or whatever? And that's why subscriptions came about, is like, how does this scale? And I think that's great. I think it has its place, but what about things that don't scale? I love thinking about that. Like, what can I do for one person that maybe I can't do for somebody else, but it is going to make their day and possibly change the trajectory of their life or their day? That's kind of why I named the podcast this, to be honest. Is like, how can I help myself have a better day? How can I help other people have a better day? Because sure, like I love work serving in people in business, but like even beyond that, what else can I do to make them have a great experience with me or around me? And so, like you mentioned at the Uscreen event, that was one of the things that we consciously facilitated. We're like, people don't know this venue and they don't know us yet. They may have seen us on a screen, they may have seen us on a video chat or whatever, but they don't know a lot. So they're coming into this. It's a free event, but like we want to blow their socks off. So they came in the door. There was a line of our team standing there. Immediately, we were like, "Hey, how are you? What's your name? What's your website? Like, what do you do?" And then one of our team members would walk them to the next table where they'd get checked in. Then they would get walked to refreshments, and then maybe introduced to somebody along the way. And it's this, people don't take that same experience and translate it, figure out like, how do I take that same feeling that we made those people feel like, whoa, wow, this is a lot, but in a good way. How do I take that and create that experience in my content, in my paid offerings? Because if I can do that, if I can make people feel special, then I probably have a winning thing, even if it doesn't scale to millions of users. Because ultimately, I think some of my favorite people to work with are the people who have 15,000 followers. They don't have, don't get me wrong. I love the people I work with who have millions of followers. I love the people who have hundreds of thousands of followers. They're fun. But there's something so gratifying about the person who has 15,000 followers, took a really big bet on themselves, and they made six figures from it. Or I start coaching. There are these two girls, actually, Gracie and Laura, who I did the session with at Uscreen Connect in LA. So I started working with them the beginning of last year, coached them for a few months, and then I was like, hey, go do your thing. You have what you need from me. It's just about staying consistent and being accountable. And they did, like, to their credit, they did everything I asked. They had their biggest revenue month ever in August of 2025. And then we I talked to them a few more times. They had their best November, December ever. So their best ended up being by a long shot their best year ever. And like I gave them the tools, but they took the tools and went and did things. And I going and being able to see like that they hit their member number, that at the beginning of the year I had asked them, if you hit that, what number of members would you have to hit for you to be like, we had a great year? And then seeing them hit that number, like it's not a huge one, but for them and their business, like it's a huge deal. And it's like they're in a much better place because of it. That like almost like brings me to tears. So I love things that don't scale. And whatever I can do to help facilitate people having better experiences and better days is that's why I'm here.
I mean, that's amazing. And I think it goes back to the old adage, if you're doing it for everyone, you're doing it for no one.
Absolutely. What do the days ahead look like for you? What are the things you're most looking forward to? Are there obstacles that you're excited to tackle in the year ahead? I'm curious about that.
I think for me in the days ahead and the years ahead, you got me at a great time because with tax time comes, you have to reflect on your future. I really want to double down on community and those unique experiences. For me, it is a lot about finding new ways that are easy for me to do, but not commonplace in the space I'm in. Because what I found in the first year of my membership here is some of the things I would do anyway, no one else has been doing, but it gives that, unique experience you talk to. So I want to do more of that. Also, email list. I heard it my whole career. I was like, yeah, whatever. Boy, completely different audience, but I want to keep learning new skills like an email list or growing a membership, because at the end of the day, what I find is we get so used to doing what we do so well and knowing what we know, forget the beginning side and the end side. And even if you're in entertainment, right? Sometimes you can just be so nuanced in your jokes that you forget that you've got to be like 6 layers deep to understand this joke. And that sometimes the simplest jokes are the funniest. I don't know about you, but sometimes if someone slips on a banana peel, I'll still chuckle. There's something human about it. There's something, and it's not a well-written joke. It's just it's a situational thing. Slapstick still slaps for a reason, right? So at the end of the day, I'm just trying to be a better person so that when I show up for my audience, I'm encouraging the behavior I'm personally doing onto them.
I love that. Well, before we wrap up, I'd love to do some quick kind of rapid fire questions. So just like a couple quick things that come to mind. Most overrated YouTube advice.
You have to go all in on one channel. That worked in 2015. YouTube has gotten to a point where it is better that you have unique focuses on each channel than try to shoehorn all ideas into one, because you're going to be competing with dedicated channels now. So I rather you have 2 channels and you see which content is picking up more than you put all content on one and get disappointed by low results.
One creator habit that you will never give up.
Writing my own videos. I know AI is out there and I know that people are like, just get AI to do it. But there's something about writing it myself. And look, I've been open that I'll ask AI, am I too does this make sense at a 6th grade reading level? Because sometimes I get, in my own admission, I get too heady, right? And it's like, hey, you bring up a point but never explain it. So like I'll use it that way, but I still write it, and that's one of those things I don't want to give up.
A mistake that you're grateful you made.
Mistake? Oh, I know. Putting off doing memberships and newsletters. I could have been doing this a lot earlier and I would have been a lot better for it, but I doubted my ability to do it, and I'm not paying the price now because it's been a great opportunity, but I could have been a lot farther. I knew to build the Discord, didn't know to build the others.
What are you most excited about this year?
More events, honestly. Like, I love getting to see the people behind the creation. I love getting to actually connect, and it's YouTube and community, and if I think we've talked about here, that's my bread and butter.
I love that. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being here. I'm really grateful to know you and to have this conversation. Where can people connect with you online?
You can connect with me at kdcc.social or on YouTube at Andrew Can with a K, and if I can, you can too.
I love it. Well, thanks so much, Andrew, and we'll see you in the next one.